Alright, what's up, y'all? Frank the guitar, bro. I don't know, man, these intros. I hit the wrong note at the end there, but anyway. There's your intro with Frank the guitar. My little Yamaha CGS 102 with a custom radius done by me. By the way, if it's not like understood, that's fine. But I don't ever, as far as I'm aware, up until this point, I pretty much have never known, and I don't think in any of them, what I was going to do for the intro. I just, picked through something, a little bit unorthodox, untraditional, off the tempo, whatever. I also don't normally play Frank without a capo, lately that has been the case. And so, just, because I told you. So, with all that intro of, being done, my name is Evan Strong. I am the founder of In the Image Clothing Company, and that is what this is here. But this is our podcast, In the Image Clothing Company Podcast, where we have discussions on the gospel of Jesus Christ. There is 3 sides to In the Image Clothing Company. We have this side here, and we do everything we do centered around the gospel of Jesus Christ. By the way, it's the truth of all things. Don't believe me. I'm going to say that right now. I say that, if and when I do, and it's often. Don't believe me, Evan Strong. I'm just the messenger. I'm just the person delivering information. I say that In the Image Clothing Company speaks universal, undisputed, eternal truths, but I also say, coupled with that, we are sinful by nature human beings. And we just mess up, and so not every single word that comes out of my mouth, being a human being who's imperfect and always will be in this life, is going to be perfect. But I'm trying to just, only speak things as they are, and this is a beautiful place for me to just sit down and have discussions, just talk about things, and it's really cool. A lot of context from our company comes through the podcast here, In the Image Clothing Company Podcast, but then also, we discuss things. I get into some deep topics. I get into some pretty hard-hitting stuff, right? I'm really bold and blunt. Sometimes it sounds like I'm trying to tear people apart with the words that are coming out of my mouth, but I'm not. I just, I just get really, hard-hitting sometimes. But we've got 3 sides, right? The other side, one of the other thirds, we'll say, because that's how it is the main side of In the Image Clothing Company, where our whole goal is the keyword allowing the human body to work. The first 3 words in our company name, In the Image Clothing Company, right? Those first 3, we are universally designed in the image of our living God, Jesus Christ. So we focus on the skeletal system of the body, and we just allow it to do the only thing it's going to do. Everything within the body is just 2 bones coming together. If there's a joint and if there's a functionality that it has physically, the body's just a mechanical machine, and it just does operations to move through its physical environment, which is our earth we've been given. Okay, now on the main side of the company, though, In the Image Clothing Company, we talk about all things that the human body is going to do physically like that. Sleeping naturally, eating naturally, staying hydrated, and what that really means. Walking naturally, sitting naturally. We talk about clothing because it's the only thing placed onto our physical bodies. An animal out there in nature just doing its physical operations has nothing on it restricting it. Because the fur that's on an animal is like the hair that human beings have or don't, right? We all have different amounts of hair. I'm a pretty hairy human being, man, and I have been since a teenage. But human beings, we place clothing onto us. If it's not shaped and designed the way that the human body works, if the seams that the clothing has to allow it to move and to allow it to stay in the location it's ideally going to when we place it onto us, aren't sitting where our joints are, then it alters the way that those joints work. And then people get into pain. You introduce ropes to the body, shoelaces, drawstrings, whatever else it may be. Now you're tying knots and you're weaving things. Now you've got a potential for a lot more damage. Stretchy things, unnatural materials that didn't even exist within the past 100 years and then ever before then. those things will alter the body. The body loves texture. The body loves things that it can predict. Clothing with no give within it. There's an episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled No Give, because then the muscles can activate. They have to get shorter to work. They can't be pulled on and have stretchy material that they can't predict where the end point of it is. They can't have synthetic, unnaturally slippery things against them where they can't, feel safe and secure as if we're walking on something slippery like ice, and the feet don't want to just do something like as if they were walking on dirt, because that way there's not as much grip, right? So we talk about a lot of things over there. And we talk about that through all three sides of the company as well, because the whole goal is allowing the human body to work. We also have another third, which is In the Image Clothing Company Music, where I show mostly guitars, right? This is my little Yamaha CGS 102A, like I said, but I put a custom radius in it, meaning a rounding to the parts of the guitar you're actually touching, right? Where the strings are going across at the top and bottom on the nut and saddle, but then also across all the frets where your hands are going to be, because their hands are naturally round. They're not flat like classical guitars are designed, even though they've been designed that way for X amount of, who knows, hundreds, thousands, very many long times of years, right? Just want to make it silly, because it doesn't matter how long something's been happening a certain way. If it's not the only way the human body works that we didn't design, then it's not going to mesh with the human body. So I discuss setups of guitars. I make music over there. We discussed just keeping the body in its natural, neutral positions, the neutral wrist, that open palm that correlates directly with the arches in our feet that grip the ground inward. We talk about things like fingernails and keeping them all the way to the ends of the fingertips to fully support them, and toenails, the same thing, all the way to the very ends of the toes for that natural support. Cut flat on the tips, and you could round the corners so they're not sharp, but that way you just have natural grip strength and your fingers aren't going to roll around. We talk about a lot of things like this. So, yes, singing, right, on In the Image Clothing Company Music. Now, we do all these things to address the human body's natural function, because the big thing is, when you place clothing onto your body, you do that for decades at a time. A decade is 10 years, right? And so human beings live multiple decades usually. A century is 100 years. Most people don't live 100 years, at least up until this point. That's just how it's been. But a lot of times we'll be wearing things like tying shoes toward the same direction when there's a center line to the body. And so now they're being pulled only one way rather than to the center, right? You tie a knot on the left foot as if you're tying a right-handed knot, that's to the center. You tie a knot on the right foot as if you're tying a left-handed knot, and that's toward the center. Okay, that's how we need to tie our shoes, but so many people will go decades tying their shoes the same direction, as I did, 20 years, give or take, doing that. Caused a lot of patterning within my body, scar tissue that builds up in joints, because especially just the side of the body that's being pulled away from its center line, which is almost in every single case for every human across the entirety of the globe to ever live, almost every case, the right side is being pulled away from its center line. The body has internal rotation that goes to the center, but then it also has external rotation that goes away from it. But everything's easier physically the closer we get to the center of our body. You're holding something kind of heavy right in front of you, right in front of the sternum in the front, which is in front of the spine that's in the center, and those are below the nose that's in the center. There's no opinion, no dispute, no yoga class, whatever you want to say about it. The body has a center, there's gravity that's pulling us straight down. So everything that we're doing, if we're holding it in front of us like this, is so much easier than if we start to try to spread our hands apart and hold something like with our arms all the way out to our sides. The same weight is so much harder to hold out here than it is right here in the front and in the middle of our bodies, in this center line that is there. Don't believe me, right? So clothing, it alters human beings, and it does. And then we get into patternings for a long time because of things we've done for potentially a long time. I mean it. I just like to make the silly voices. And so I do. Now, this is the thing. If oversized clothing is being worn, something that is too wide for your shoulders and so it's slipping back and forth, if the Yes, if that's happening, it's going to fall to the dominant side of your body. That's the side you're going to be reaching with the most. That's the side that if anything does get slightly worn out within clothing at all, which, ideally our clothing is pretty well made, in the Image Clothing Company clothing will be. At least we're going to have every intent for it to be, right? I mean, don't hold us to a higher standard than we can be. We're only imperfect human beings. But whatever's going on, there's going to be discrepant, right? Different left to right. It's going to be that dominant side. And so that clothing's going to fall to the dominant side, pull that side of the body away from its center line. And then the musculature is going to not be able to do its operations. It has to contract and get shorter to work toward the center. It's being pulled away in those cases. And so within our joints, because we do focus on the skeletal system here at In the Image Clothing Company, because the fat content of our bodies changes at different times in our lives, and so does the amount of muscle mass that we have. But our skeletal system, just like within the gospel of Jesus Christ, it's our foundation. There'd be no need for muscles if they weren't moving the skeletal system, right? It's a prerequisite. You have to have bones first. Within the gospel of Jesus Christ, we create our foundation. Create our foundation? I don't know if that's quite the way I wanted to word that, but we build our foundation on the rock, Jesus Christ. And then from there, well, now you've built your foundation on the truth of all things. Don't believe me, but that's what it is. And we get into it, we talk about it. So, the human body, it needs to be unrestricted and unaltered, but sometimes that happens after the fact. In my case, it was about 20 years, give or take, right? I'm 25 right now, but as a little kid, I'm not wearing shoes for the first part of, my life, let's say. Most people don't really tie shoes for the first few years of life. They're wearing slip-on shoes most often. But then you start tying shoes unevenly. You start to get into patternings from wearing clothing, just after years of being on this earth, meaning just a few of them, right? So it usually takes few years for these patternings to start really getting set into place, if you will. But anything you're placing on the body that's not shaped and fitting it the way that it's going to work, it's going to have to try to, and it cannot work around it. The body only does what it does. We can never get our human flesh to do something it's not designed to do by our living God. We didn't design it. We can't decide it. That was episode 62 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. So, and that's just what we say, though, right? Because it's just the truth, bro. So, yeah. All right. So because of all that, though, human beings across the entirety of the globe, no matter what the time period is, it could be like X amount of who knows on either end of anything. And any part of the earth you live on, if you're a man, if you're a woman, if you're tall, if you're short, if you're skinny, if you're fat, if you, whatever, seriously, you got this part of your body missing or that part of your body looks a little different. Cool. I mean, you're still a human being, at the foundation of what you are. The clothing that we wear, the pants specifically, need to be entirely above our hips. There's a lot going into the hips, man. A lot of muscles going into the hips. There's a lot of operation within the hips, the legs, the spine. The femurs come up into the hips. The spine goes down into the hips. You got so many muscles, abduction and adduction, internal rotation, external rotation. You got hip flexion, and you got lots of stuff happening, extension of things and whatever's going on there, which is a lot. And we know it. We talk about it. We do. But the pants need to be all the way entirely above the hips at the waistband, the waistline of the pants, and also slightly higher in the front than in the rear for the waistband angle, because the core muscles of our body, like the core of an apple, they support the entire body. We don't just try to activate our cores before we do a certain movement. The core should always, as it would always naturally be, unless or until altered, which ideally never until altered, it should never be altered. The human being is something we're given. The body that we have, regardless of what you want yours to be or look like or operate like or whatever, it's yours and you didn't decide it. But it's because you didn't design it. The core always needs to be activated. It would never be deactivated. It's the center of our whole being from top to bottom. It supports everything from there out. Like the core of an apple, you core an apple and the apple withers away and doesn't even exist because it turns back into earth. We are just what we ate, right? Man was, how does it go? Man was pulled from the clay and he returns to it when we die, right? We're just an accumulation of what we've eaten. And so, yeah. I think I said at the very start of this, I woke up and I didn't say any words yet before I started this podcast episode. In the Image Clothing Company podcast, episode 54, which, by the way, the title of this is Get Used to It. And we'll get into it. But yeah, the core of our body should always be activated, or else the whole thing feels like it's withering away, as I've discussed, man. And that's just how it is. A lot of people are in that state, though. But muscles have to contract and get shorter to activate. And really, they just be that way naturally. But that's how we're going to allow that to happen while wearing pants. Now, the tops that we wear, the seams on top of our shoulders need to be evenly behind these two little bones that are up here. That's the other end of the collarbone, which is those bones that come down to the center of our, like, base of our neck, right? And that's what allows us to keep our shoulders in their natural position behind the body, because the shoulders do connect behind the body. Muscles have 2 insertions, one at each end, or maybe 3 insertions if they're holding on to different things, and that's the case with our upper trapezius muscles. They connect to the very, 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 very rear of the base of the skull and to that cervical spine, which is just the spine that's the neck, and then they come down and connect to the shoulders. So the shoulders really only will ever work for any human to ever live behind our head. And a lot of people are going around like this. If you're not watching this in visual, in the Image Clothing Company podcast, if you're just in audio only, that's fine. But a lot of people going around with their shoulders in front of their ears, for example, and they connect behind the base of your skull and actually onto your spine, which is the very rear of your body. So, but it's clothing. It is clothing. I mean, even if it's other things as well, it's clothing, baseline, bottom line, and period, and done, and that's it. Don't believe me, but it's the truth. You don't have to believe me, because you start doing what we discuss here in the Image Clothing Company, but you live over in like Russia or something, any part of the globe. I'm just saying it could be anywhere. And these things will change your life. It's not like you got to believe us on anything. We're just giving context on what's happening and why you're potentially in some persistent pain. And you're like, where's this coming from? I don't know what's going on. Or you just get extra, worn out throughout the day. But you're like, I feel like my body could do more, but it feels like just going around doing the things I do, there's something else that's like causing me to be more fatigued and causing my muscles to have to work harder. It's your clothing. Don't believe me. It's the truth. Right? I mean it. So at the edges of our shoulders, that's where they should sit for the seams that are on our clothing, because that's where the ball and socket joint of the shoulder works, right? Ideally, if the socket of the shoulder capsule as a whole, lots of stuff going into the shoulder, man, rotator cuffs and, the glenohumeral head of the, I don't know. We get all talking about anatomy if you want, but where the shoulder works here, that's where it's going to move, because that's what we just said. And so that's where the seam needs to sit. Otherwise, the seam's in a different location of the operation of the thing that we're covering, being our human body, with the clothing we place onto it, okay? So button-ups are different as far as the top seams, though, because there's a band of material rather than just a singular seam, so that just will naturally sit behind the shoulders. I love button-ups. In the Image Clothing Company is going to have button-ups that we sell. If you want to buy, purchase, receive in the Image Clothing Company clothing when it comes time for it to be available, you can do that. You don't have to, but we're going to have every intention on it being just wonderful. As far as nothing extra special, it's actually going to be very simple, but just to allow the body to work. Staying centered, fitting correct, allowing the body to work. Okay. Wow. I feel like this is a long intro, but I feel like there's also not a problem with it. I'm battling myself right now. I'm praying through it as I'm talking. I'm like, I have been kind of talking for a while on just the simplicity of what this intro could be, but I don't feel wrong about it either. Because what I do a lot of time is say these intros slightly different each time to give some context that's not in other ones, right? The foundational information is still the same, but I throw some things in to kind of switch it up a little bit. So, and sometimes it's kind of long, the intro. Sometimes we'll have like a 10-minute intro, but then the episode's, somewhere around an hour, let's say. So it just is what it is, dude. I mean, because the point of the Image Clothing Company is the things we're discussing in the intros, really. It's allowing the human body to work. And so I give information on how to do that, and then we have our discussion on the things we do, the gospel of Jesus Christ. So, if you're wondering, like, why is the intro so long for these podcasts? Well, because the intro is where you're getting your information as far as, like, what our company physically is doing. And that's within the intros of the podcast where we say what that is in the Image Clothing Company podcast, right? So, We also, though, have 2 additional prerequisites under In the Image Clothing Company. Not stuff we're trying to get you to do, but when we wear shoes and we put laces in them, all we're doing is taking a rope and putting it on the top of the feet in a knot, in a patterning of a weave, right? The foot of the human being is only shaped the way that it is. Like I discussed about how the joints of the body only have their operations. That's within the feet. There's 20 something, I think 27 bones within the feet. A lot of stuff that's going on within the feet. It's the foundation of our whole body. If the feet are altered, it doesn't matter what you're doing with the rest of the body. You're never going to overcome the alterations that are being caused by the feet from like an external thing, shoes. If you've got pain in your shoulders, right? But you're tying your shoes unevenly, that's where it's actually coming from. Truly, don't believe me, it's the case. So we've got the shoelace technique we use in the Image Clothing Company's shoelace technique, if you will. Find that where you find us. And with that, though, we tie our shoes evenly over toward the inside. Like I was saying earlier, I already discussed that within this intro, so we're good there. Secondly, our other prerequisite is to remove all tags from clothing. That does include the shoes as well. Any tag within an item of clothing, it's causing a physical gap that's just going to alter the skeletal system's position, or it's also made out of a slippery material that just didn't exist in the past, and the much recent past is when it got invented. And so that material is something the musculature of the body can't activate against. If anything within the body isn't working correct, something else and many things have to compensate just to allow the body to work, but it still is being inhibited in that case, because the body only works as a whole. So, there we go. Now, let's get into this. The reason this is titled Get Used to It, episode 64 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, is because there's a lot of stuff in life that we just gotta get used to, man. And it gets so much better once we do. But there's like this initial period where, a lot of people are a little bit weary of change, a little bit wary. I don't know. What we do is wear these items of clothing. I don't know. I think it's weary, how you say that word. A lot of people don't like change so much, but it's something that you just can't have a say over. I'm sorry. And in some cases, I mean that. It was a sarcastic sorry. Genuinely, it was. I want to make that clear. But in some cases, I get it. In some cases, it's kind of hard. Myself included. There's stuff that I, have had to deal with change-wise in my life that I was like, man, I don't really want this to change. Things have been so good the way they have. And shoot, if they change, I'm going to have to change a little bit with them, But growing up, my parents divorced, and that was a big change, brother. That was a big change, I spent many years of my life only being with my mom 2 days out of every 2 weeks. Every other weekend is what the legal system of the United States of America and my earthly father and whatever, came up with. I only got to be with my mom 4 days out of the month, right? Every month. This was for years. And so basically, you pack up a suitcase and jump in a car and sit there and take a drive over to mom's house and then hang out for 2 days and then pack your stuff back up and take a drive back to where you're living with your dad. That's how my life was for years, man. That's something I never decided, but it was some change that I had to kind of deal with, You just kind of had to do it, bro. I didn't have a say over it. I was just a kid. We call them minors here in the United States of America, right? That's how it works. Once you're 18 years old, you go from being a minor, just meaning like a kid, to being a, I don't know what the other word is actually, but just, being an adult. Once you're 18, you can legally, make your own decisions. Most of them. There's still a couple things you got to wait till you're 21 to do, but for the most part, you're an adult at 18. And so, I was just a little kid. I was 7 years old when my parents divorced, and so years after that, this is how my life was looking every other weekend, man. And that's changed. That's something I don't want to have to do, but you get used to it, Title of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, episode 64. Because you have to. If you don't get used to it, what are you going to do? Complain about it every single time, and you're not going to change it. It's just going to have to be what it is. And so you kind of got to get used to it, man. You kind of just do, But it's something that I didn't decide. So what? Am I going to sit there and just try to have all the control in the world that I can't? The illusion of control, as we talk about, No, you just got to get used to it. Things that are really outside of your control, which is actually pretty much just about every single thing that we experience as a human being. But give or take, there's some things that we can have a little bit of influence on in the ways that we can. There really is, right? And sometimes we can have actually, seriously, something that's very close to what we could label as control over certain things, right? Like our own being. But Still not really, because everything can just happen and anything can just happen without us having a say. And then all of a sudden we're like, what the? I thought I had this all covered. And then something changes, man. You just got to get used to it. Really, the big thing is we just got to get used to change. We're going to get into this. We already are, but here's the thing, dude. Within the human body, we'll talk about this for at least a minute or two, or maybe 50. We'll talk about it, maybe just for a minute or two. But the thing is, within the human body, we've got to get used to the new position we get into. If you have been tying your shoes unevenly, which is not some kind of opinion that some company labeled In the Image Clothing Company has for a human to do, and you happen to stumble across this, and now some kid named Evan Strong, who's the founder of this company, In the Image Clothing Company, is just trying to tell you to do something, that is not the case. But the human body just has a center line. You're just tying a rope in your shoes, and you got 2 feet. So for that reason, you have 2 shoes, and they're on opposing sides to the center, where the arches in our feet will grip inward to combat that force of opposition, right? I made a video for In the Image Clothing Company, the main side, back in the fall of 2024, titled A Life Without Arches, and I discussed what it would be like to not have feet arches. And some people experience that, they've got like an amputated leg or something, and they know it's a little bit harder to go through life, And perfect. Other than there's no such thing besides our God, we are imperfect. That's what I mean. Some people get their legs cut off, bro. But it's a great example, is what I'm saying, because what are you going to do? You're going to sit there and complain about it, right? You got some kind of reason to have a leg amputated, and it's outside of whose control? Well, yours, and you're the one that it has happened to. What are you going to do? You're going to sit there and have a hard time with it? I don't mean just like it could be kind of hard to deal with, but I mean, are you going to make it a hard time? Or are you going to be like, all right, I guess I just got to get used to this, because there's nothing else you can do. That's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing at all, right? What am I going to do? Complain? Now I got to go back and forth with my parents, from my dad's house to my mom's for X amount of years as a little kid into my teenage years? Or am I just going to say, I guess I got to get used to it. I can't really do anything about it because I really couldn't have. I was just a kid. Legally, I couldn't have done anything about it, I had to get used to it, right? It's not so comfortable sometimes, these things that we don't want to have to get used to, but we have to, because we're not going to change certain things. We're not really going to change much of anything, like I'm saying. It's not up to us. We're not in charge, right? All these things that I say, all these things that we talk about within the gospel of Jesus Christ, because the truth is, and that's the key word there, the truth, which is our God himself, Jesus the Christ. He's in charge of everything. He's above everything. He's the way maker, though, that could make a way out of nothing. And he can. And so, but only if he needs it done, because he's the orchestrator of all this and we're not. And so he uses things that we don't want to have to get used to get us better at getting used to things that come up, right? He uses things, struggles and tribulations and trials and things that we don't want to have to do to strengthen us and to help us and to teach us and give us more experience and understanding. I don't want to be putting myself on some kind of pedestal because, if I fall off my high horse, I might... What does Mac Miller say? If I get knocked off my high horse, I might fall to my death, right? But in all seriousness, I've been through a lot, brother. So let's compare, because I'm so much better than you. No, I'm just kidding. But I've been through, I want to make it very clear, that was a joke. I'm not. We are equal human beings. I am not better than anybody else. No matter if I want to believe it or he or her wants to believe it, on neither end of anything. But I'm going to say this because I have been through a lot. I mean, we really can't compare, but if I just sit there and start to talk about my life, oh wait, let me start a podcast for my clothing company that I started, In the Image Clothing Company, right? That's what I do. So I already have given a lot of context and understanding, but I've been through a lot, brother. So feel bad for me. No, please don't. But just meaning I've got a lot of experience, and I go through that stuff, and I've gone through the things that I am currently talking about, right? Or have the opportunity to now, because they're in the past, whatever that means. We're in one eternal now. But here's the thing, our God's course is one eternal round, right? We have an episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled One Eternal Round, where I discussed that. I love that because it's the truth. So here, it's apart from me, right? The truth of all things. It's not something I'm deciding. I could not, nor could I change it. but it changes me, and that's what I'm saying. I've been through so much, and that's how I have the understandings that I do. I don't got to sit here and try to convince someone that I'm an understanding person or that I have a lot of experience of just life, right? Because I just do. It's not something that you could deny if you just hear my words and hear my stories and hear the ways that I can discuss things and pick things apart and understand things, because I do, right? I'm a very understanding person, so praise me, right? I just like to say stuff that's silly like that after I say such a bold like thing about who I am, as if like it's so great. No, it's awesome. It really is. It's such a gift to me personally to be able to have all this understanding. But it's had to come through going through a lot of things I never wanted to have to. But I had to get used to it, right? I had 6 heart surgeries in the ways that I did, 2 of them being full on open heart surgeries. What am I gonna do? Just like sit there recovering from surgery and be like, man, can this not be the case? No, I just got to get used to this is the new way of being, because it happened and we move forward, right? We just got to get used to things. You're not going to be saying something, hoping that something's not what it is. You just got to get used to it, dude. A lot of life experiences and situations that I had to deal with growing up that I just had to get used to. Whether it lasted for the entirety of my existence on this planet as a human being in my current physical fleshly form, or if it was just like a month or two, or like an hour and a half, right? Or like 4 seconds, but you don't want them to be putting that needle in your arm, right? You're sitting there and it's like, you just got to get used to it, you know? You getting IVs left and right. Me, Evan Strong, as a little kid, just being in the hospital all the time. But if I just, say I don't want to have it happen, well, there was reasons and things that were causing it to have to be the case that I had to get needles poked into me all the time, and I just had to get used to it. You know what I'm saying? We just gotta get used to stuff, bro. Otherwise, you're gonna just be trying to like fight something you're never gonna change anyway. So it's actually you in those cases, as hard as that is to hear for anybody's situation, or myself included in the times that it was. It's really you in those cases making those situations worse for yourself, or me in the past, or any time that could happen. If I'm trying to just make something be what it isn't, and not just being okay with having to get used to something that's not something I'm going to change. Now I'm just making it harder on myself. If I'm just, well, because that's the case as I did as a kid. I was growing up, I didn't want to have to pack myself up every other weekend and go down to mom's for just 2 days and then come back to a place I didn't want to be. I didn't want to be where I was with my dad because of, all the things that came with that. And I've discussed a lot of that, and we'll just talk about it as it is. And as we do, it's just my life story. It's my personal experience, and it wasn't very fun, man. It's a very, very large understatement, but it was a hard thing to do. But I just had to get used to it, bro. It's something I couldn't do anything about at the time. I wanted to, but I couldn't. I really couldn't. But that's like I'm saying, one of those things that gave me a lot of understanding and a lot of life experience that I can now help others with and through, right? So it's really cool, actually. As hard as it is, I mean, we're given trials and stuff just to teach us and to expand us, right? And to deepen our being. I mean, we're here, man, and we just get deepened by things that we go through. And a lot of things that we just, you know, you find out you got type 1 diabetes, and now you got to do this and that to regulate your blood sugar. Well, what are you going to do? Sit there and complain about it and hope that it changes? Your hopes aren't going to get you anywhere, bro. You're not in charge. Neither am I, by the way. I'm not trying to talk higher or lower to anyone, right? I'm just like speaking across a lake. Water just settles evenly on a north with gravity. I'm just talking across to you, you know what I'm saying? We're sitting in some chairs across a flat table, although I don't. We talk about within In The Image Clothing Company, chair heights are very damaging to the human body. You're sitting with hamstring weight on you. That's not what I meant to say exactly, but close. You're sitting with weight on your hamstrings, those muscles in the rear of your upper legs, and you're just cutting those muscles off. They have to contract to activate. So you need to be sitting in something low enough to where those hamstrings aren't being pressed into by something, right? Your glutes, your sit bones on the base of your pelvis, those things are meant to be sat on. That's what I'm doing right now, because if you're sitting on the ground, which is something that will always be there, that's a natural thing to do. But you're sitting in the chair height, that's not something you got to get used to, bro. That's something you're altering your human flesh with if you're doing. But I'm just saying, I'm talking across to you, right? As if we're in a conference meeting. I don't know where I was before I started saying that, but I'm glad that I did. The point is, dude, we go through things, man, and no matter how much we wish or hope or want, that's where I was. things are just what they are. Our wishes, our hopes, our wants, our desires, they're not going to change what's happening. Prayer is what's going to help. We pray to our living God and say, hey, this is rough, Father. Is there something I can do? Have I just not fully done what you've allowed me to be able to, put into place to maybe change this thing? Or is this something I really just got to get used to, even though I don't want to? You're sitting there crying. In all seriousness, it's fine to cry. I cry. Human beings cry. It's not about me versus him. It's not about me versus her. It's not about me versus the past me who didn't, right? Many years of my life I went without crying. But that's not something you can just get used to, like sitting in a chair height, right? You get an office job and someone, you're like, man, this chair's uncomfortable. I got to be here 8 or 9 hours a day, boss, really? He's like, you'll get used to it. No, you won't. Your human flesh won't. The human body's just not designed to do that thing. The human body's just not designed to hold in its emotions. You're not just going to get used to those things. Because I didn't even really think I was going to be discussing like this, but it's on the other end as well. There's a lot of things that we can't just get used to in life, but we try to. We try to make things be what we want them to be, and we can just hopefully get used to them. Yeah, your hopes aren't going to get you anywhere, but deeper into just the same pain you're already experiencing. And that deeper could just mean more amount of time, right? Like that job, you're not going to feel better after X amount of time because your body's going to like get used to sitting in a chair. No, it just doesn't sit in a chair. You're cutting off your muscles, and very large ones. But if anything within the human body isn't working correct, something else and many things have to compensate, right? So you've got back pain and knee pain, neck pain, shoulder pain, because your hamstrings are being cut off by a chair you're sitting on. It's just an unnatural height the human being would never sit in unless we had this modern man-made 2025, right? So, yeah. Today, I said it, but I'm going to say it again. Today's the 19th of February, 2025. It's a Wednesday. Now, here's the thing, dude. We got to cry as human beings. I like this other end of things, right? We're saying this for right now, at least. We'll get into what we get into. We're already into this. So get used to it, bro, or leave. No, just kidding. You got a problem within the Image Clothing Company? Stick around, right? Again, it's on the opposite end of things. That's where we're sitting right now. It's the opposite end of getting used to things. You can't get used to holding in your emotions as a human being, because as a human being, one thing that we are doing and one thing that we are being as a human is a fleshly operable machine that has one of its functions being an emotional dynamic. We go through things, we feel happy, it's just a fleeting emotion. Don't get used to that being something you can hold on to, because you cannot. It will fleet and fly and flow away. And ideally, that's what our emotions do, is flow, brother. Ride the waves of the emotions, dog. They're just what they are, and they come and go. Like the fat content that you're so worked up about because it's like the day after Thanksgiving. You know what I'm saying? Comes and goes. We focus on the skeletal system. The structure, which is, in this case, our structure is our God, the gospel of Jesus Christ. And we look in there and we're like, hey, we're commanded actually to come crying on our knees with a broken heart and a contrite spirit to our living God, Jesus Christ. That's how he wants us. He wants us to come to him broken, because then he can mold us and do things with us. And I'm going to cry. I really might. And I do. It's not some kind of thing like I'm saying, like, I think some people say that a lot. They're like, I'm going to cry. But they use it as just like a silly way to say like that meant something to them or whatever. I say that when I'm about to, because I do. I mean, check out past episodes of In the Image Clothing Company Podcast. I've been in this exact location that I'm currently sitting, filming an episode of In the Image Clothing Company Podcast, and I was crying hard, bro. And I do, and I will as I do. I mean, that's what I'm saying. We can't get used to this idea that we can just hold in our emotions, because it will just explode, dude. And I had many years in my life where I was around people and in environments where it wasn't safe to experience emotions the way that I naturally do. And so I tried to, my body's natural way of being, which is flowing through emotions as they come up like an infant baby does. And I tried to get used to not crying, and I tried to get used to not feeling emotions, but I couldn't have done that because I didn't design my human being, right? Episode 62 of In the Image Clothing Company Podcast, titled, We Didn't Design It, We Can't Decide It. You know what I'm saying? I love that episode so much. I talked a lot about the earth in that, not just the human being, but Also the planet we're placed onto. We only get one of them. Please take care of it. Don't let me tell you what to do. Don't believe me, but please, because I'm here too. But yeah, growing up, it wasn't a safe thing, man, because a lot of times it would, hurt me worse if I would feel emotions because of especially the one individual that I was around. I didn't get to choose to be, we just get placed here, but gave me a lot of perspective, you know, gave me a lot of understanding, of dynamics and of why people are how and what they are. And now I can look around and I got this x-ray vision to where I can look into people and I can see why they're acting the way they are. I don't mean to make it silly, but I want to make it silly so I don't sound so like egoic, like I'm the smartest, most understanding person there is. But I'm really understanding. But it's only come from having to get used to things for a certain amount of time that I didn't want to. Being in situations that I didn't want to be in, trying to get out of, but I mean, I really couldn't have, What are you going to do? Run away until what? The police come find you because they think that something's worse off now when really you're just trying to make it better for yourself, right? It's this paradox. It's the gospel of Jesus Christ. It's the truth of all things. It's, hey, come to this earth and it's going to be hard. Life's very, 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 it's very simple. I don't know. It's so simple. Life's such a simple thing. We're a human being. We need love, food, water. The body's got to be kept at a certain temperature, When I say water, it's got to just stay hydrated. It's not just about dumping a bunch of water in the being. It's just going to come right back out. We focus on hydration a lot because that's a very misunderstood thing. But the human body's so simple. I mean, we can really live with that simple of things, right? It's like stuff you can count on one hand and you can have a very fulfilled life. But just because life's simple, as in what it means to be alive and what it takes for that to be, that doesn't mean it's not hard. Life's very hard, man. You're not going to get yourself to have an easy life. A lot of people look like their life is easy, man, and they just only show certain things, But, dude, man, a lot of things we just got to get used to, truly. And that's rough, right? When you're going through something hard, you don't want somebody to come up to you and you're like telling them, well, they're like, hey, what's up? What's wrong? And you're like, I'm going through this and it's rough. You don't want someone to just be like, well, get used to it, turn around and walk away. You don't want them to do that. But if someone comes up to you like, hey, what's wrong? And you're like, I'm going through this and it's hard. And they say, well, here's the thing. It's not going to last forever. But what you got to do right now, because there's really nothing you can do about this one specific thing we're discussing, whatever it is in that case, that's rough to go through. You're not going to change this. This is something that's out of your control. It's out of your hands. What you're going to have to do is get used to it. For how long it's going to happen, regardless of if that's longer than you want it to be or not, you got to get used to this. Because we're sent here to go through certain things that are out of our control that we just have to learn to adapt to. We got to learn to change to, man. A few years ago, man, the whole world went through a whole thing, dude. We got some, professional pitcher throwing the craziest curveball at us, dog. And I'm sitting there with my Louisville slugger, and I'm missing all these hits, dog. Because I think that I can do something about the fact that we got what they call a pandemic going on. I'm not even going to get into that, except I might. I might. It's such a thing, man. It was something we couldn't have expected, something people got opinions on. It's something that regardless of what people's opinions were, it's still what it was in the ways that it was, even if nobody fully understood what it was. I mean, you know what I mean? We could talk about it on all ends of anything. That was a whole thing, dude. And we're all of a sudden having to wear these things that we never needed to or wanted to. First word there I said needed, that was a questionable one, right? Because who knows what was even happening in that time? How much of that was real versus how much of that was this or that from this person trying to do something, right? How much of that was, hey, we're just about there as far as we've been leading up to a very big event, truly, don't believe me, but the second coming of our living God, Jesus Christ. How much of that was what? I mean, that was a big thing, dude. A pandemic. That sounds scary. You ever heard of the Black Plague? I remember being in school, hearing about these little rats on a boat. That's what I felt like I was going through back in 2019 or whatever it was. Holy dude, that was that's something we had to get used to. You know what I'm saying? And what are you gonna do otherwise? You're gonna try to change the law enforcement across the entirety of our earth that was all in like union for once over something that was weird. You know what I mean? All we could do was get used to that. It's stuff like that. I mean, there's certain things we just got to get used to. And boy, is it weird. I mean, that's the word we can use for a lot of these things. Weird. What in the world? What is everybody doing? We have never experienced this in our lifetime. Look around at this, right? When the pandemic was going on. Holy. That was strange, dude. We just had to get used to it. And this is the thing, we had to get used to it regardless of if it was going to end in the next month when they like kept trying to claim that it was going to, right? And then they extend it. Or if it lasted for the rest of our lives, as in the people who were alive when it was happening. Who knows, right? But the point is you got to get used to it because we're not going to change it. I love that. You know, one man can change the world. And yeah, in the ways he can. I've talked about that. Me, little old Evan Strong, I've said, I think there was an episode of the podcast that was, I don't know if it was titled something like that, but most of the whole thing was geared around like a discussion on that, where I was like, I'm going to change the world. And I mean it. But then I also was clear to say, like, even if that means like I'm sitting on a park bench next to somebody and I change their life, right? Because it's a domino effect. I'm not sitting here trying to be Martin Luther King Jr. #2, right? And have like a speech that the world has remembered for quite a long time at this point. You know, it's been decades. That dude's words, man, they're ringing on forever. But that's what I was saying within there. It's just because he spoke truth, right? So that's what I mean is I'm sitting here on the floor recording episodes of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, just speaking truth. So that's how I'm going to change the world. Whether it's like 5 people's lives or the entirety of the globe and every single human being who has ears hears, right? Because that's what our God says when it comes to the gospel of Jesus Christ. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. That's a scripture. That's a verse. You ever heard of the Sermon on the Mount? When our living God himself was on this earth in physical form? And he'll be back. Don't believe me, but he will. He sat there and he said those words. He probably stood, but you know. That's what I mean when I say I'm going to change the world. I mean, it could be something small, you know. I'm changing like one life of another human being. But then they go off and change another life. And then they go off and change another life. You know, it's the domino effect. You know that movie Pay It Forward? I don't know who it's by, or I'd give credit to the, you know, producers and writers and all the people who did the thing, right? But there's a movie titled Pay It Forward. And, yeah, that's how you change the world. One little small act of kindness at a time, right? So that's what I mean. Whenever I say I'm going to change the world, it's not like I'm expecting myself to be like the king of the world, because there's only one king. Don't believe me, but there is. There's a lot of kings in certain parts of the world, certain time periods, but I mean, one eternal true king is actually over all those other kings as well. The King of Kings, as he is titled, our living God, Jesus Christ. So, I don't know where I was before I got into that, but that's not a problem at all. It's just that's not quite saying get used to it. But I love what I just said there so much. But anyway, yeah, I mean, there's some stuff we just got to get used to, you know. Some stuff's above us, man. The government. I mean, you want to say all you want about how you're gonna, you know, change something. You're not without, you know, causing a problem. I mean, we're commanded to actually like, you know, respect the laws, man. As hard as that is sometimes, you know, we're not going to change it. Sometimes there's some laws that put in place we don't want to have to deal with, you know, wherever we're at. And sometimes they really are a little bit like, you know, a little bit not so on the mark with being a beneficial law. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes I get changed after, you know, a while. Sometimes those laws stay that way for a long time. But like maybe they really, the whole time they're in place, aren't actually the best thing. And it's not really benefiting much of anybody. Whatever it is, you know, I mean, we got to get used to stuff being what it is. Because we gotta just do things to be, you know, people who can work together even though we can't. I mean, you know what I'm saying? I mean, you go get an occupation at some place, you know, you're going and doing some kind of thing for somebody, so they're going to compensate you with what we call currency, you know. And I just like to make that as silly as it is as well, but you kind of got to just get used to it being how it is. You didn't lay out this place that you go there to do something for. You're going there to help them with their place, the way that it's structured. And if you don't like it so much, you got to either get used to it or go somewhere else. But there's certain times we can't go somewhere else. I mean, this whole life as a experience, we kind of just got to get used to it, brother. There's a lot in this life that's not ever going to be quite how we want it to be. But there's a lot in this life you're never going to change, no matter how much of like a hero you are or want to be. You know, no matter how much I say as Evan Strong that I'm going to change the world, I don't mean it like that. Like, I'm not going to change things, really. I'm not. I mean, because even if there's stuff that I want to change, things are set in place for a reason, and I just kind of got to get used to them as they are, because if I were to try to change them for how I might think I want them to be, or I might think they could be better in certain times of my life, yeah, it's probably not going to actually be better. You know, I just kind of got to get used to them how they are and learn how to work around stuff as the human being that I am. We got to be able to get used to things, man. But a big thing, like I was saying, within the human body is when you start tying your shoes evenly, after tying them unevenly for X amount of who knows, I love to word it like that because that could mean X amount of infinity, right? Because a lot of times I say X amount of forever. Or it could be like, you know, you're doing it for a few years, but then somebody comes along and you're in elementary school and they're like noticing your feet are not working quite how they're designed. Like, do you tie your shoes weirdly? And you're like, well, what do you mean? And they're like, well, tie them like this. My dad taught me when I was first tying shoes, you tie them over toward the inside because there's a center line to your body. And that'll help you, you know? And then you're like, oh my gosh, this kid just changed my life. And you're like 8 years old, you know what I mean? Something like that. I mean, that happens. That's what I mean when I say I'm gonna change the world. I'm giving stuff like that, little information that, you know, you're in the schoolyard of your elementary school on recess, and the rest of your life has been changed because you made a friend. I mean that. Yeah, that makes me emotional. That's what I mean when I say I'm gonna change the world. So that's crazy. That's ridiculous. But that's what I mean. You know, I'm crying, bro. When I say like I'm gonna cry, it's because I feel it actually coming on. I mean it. I'm crying right now. That's what I want. That's the whole like purpose behind the Image Clothing Company physically. You know, it's things like that, man. That's gonna really change your life. That's unreal, dude. Man, that's how you make a friend, dude. I'm crying, truly. So I'm gonna sit in it for a second because that's awesome, bro. But the whole thing is you got to get used to that now. Your feet have been pulled unevenly. Really just one of them has been pulled and changed the rotation of your entire body for however long you've been doing that. Your body's got to get used to it. All the muscles have to now get used to pulling in their normal position after been trying to work in other ones, and they've got scar tissue built up and the skeletal system's being twisted and, you know, altered. Your body has to get used to it, man. You know, you go from wearing oversized clothing for years or even just months or weeks, but sometimes maybe decades. Like in my case, there's a long time that I was wearing oversized clothing. You start to wear clothing that fits you correct. Your shoulders have to get used to going from working in a position they will never work, which is clear down here, with all your muscles pulled on and elongated, potentially bone spurs happening within the body. That happens all the time, dude. Because those insertions, a muscle just connects to a bone on one end and on the other end. If it's pulling on the muscle in a way that it's not just going to track if the muscle's pulling on the bone in a way that that joint isn't just going to track in line, then that bone can actually grow in a weird way that it's being pulled on. It's called a bone spur, like a little, like, you know, part of bone that's been pulled out and extended and grown in a way to try to accommodate for something that's never going to be normal for it. So your body has to adjust from those things. Your shoulders have to go from trying to work clear down here to working in their only working position once you start wearing clothing that fits you again. And you just got to get used to it. So that's what I've been dealing with for a little over a year at this point, man. I've been going through a lot of physical pain through that, but I have to because I got to get used to the only normal that's there. It takes some time. It takes some effort, right? When I was a kid and I was getting tossed back and forth, that's how it felt, dude, like they were playing catch with me. My parents. right? I had to get used to it. It took some time. I couldn't say something about it, right? But that was just how it's gonna be for that amount of time that it was, man. Sometimes we just gotta get used to some things in life, bro. Well, that's another thing. The beauty of emotion. If you have been spending X amount of time in your life trying to shut yourself off, dog, and I say it like that, like I'm some kind of thug, bro, because that hits. That's how I was as a teenager, making rap songs because I thought I was like so against the world until I learned that you're supposed to be. That's liberating. It's the truth. Yeah, we're here to overcome the world, but the point is, man, shoot, that's big too. Christ came and he overcame the world, and so we're commanded to follow in his footsteps as our shepherd, and we are his sheep. You got an opinion on what the word sheep means? I know the past few years, like, there's this whole thing about what the word sheep or term sheep means. But again, what does it really mean? Let's go back to it biblically, doctrinally, before there was any chance for someone to get into what they call politics, right? We are sheep to our shepherd, Jesus the Christ. He knows us. His sheep are numbered. He knows the amount of hairs on all of our heads. He knows everything about everything that is us. And we don't. Gotta get used to that. Using terms in ways they're actually designed to use, right? Designed to be used rather than what people are trying to use them as nowadays. We gotta get used to the fact that people just take things and twist them, right? The adversary comes to kill, steal, and destroy, right? And he manipulates something that's so beautiful slightly and makes it something that's just evil because it's just a tiny bit off. You know, a lot of beautiful things we can do as human beings, and it gets manipulated and turned and tweaked just slightly, and all of a sudden it's the most evil, right? Terrible stuff that I've been caught up in, similar to that. You know, there's some beautiful things that we're doing as human beings, but if we're not doing it quite the way it's designed to work, then shoot, man, we can get caught up in some things, and I have. Believe me, but don't, right? Don't believe me, but I believe some things for some times, and I shouldn't have, but I did, and I made mistakes. I made some mistakes. Is that okay? Oh, you don't think so? Oh, shoot. Well, I don't care, because you're making them too, even if they look a little different. We got to get used to it. We're never going to be perfect. You're trying to be perfect all your life? Well, get used to the fact that you're going to mess up. And I'm going to sit on that for a second. But where was I? Because I was saying something about getting tossed around as a kid. I don't know. If I didn't quite finish whatever I thought I was saying or whatever, that's fine. If it comes back to me, it comes back to me. But the point is, we just got to get used to stuff, man. There's a lot of stuff we're just never going to be able to have control over, dude. And we got to get used to that, dude. You know? So, emotions, good. I'm glad that I remembered because that's a big one, a big hard-hitting thing. Anyway, I went a lot of years of my life just not allowing myself to feel emotions, right? I get made fun of and called this and that, and I'd show that I was any kind of weakness. Yeah, we'll word it like that. And I love that because I didn't say it quite correct. But hey, guess what? I'm gonna keep it that way, even though I know right now what I could do to make it a little bit more grammatically correct. I like that too because maybe that's not right. But that's the thing. Growing up, if I wasn't trying all that I could do to be perfect in the sight of another human being who I didn't decide to be around, then he would tell me I was this and that and what, and make me feel even worse. And so if I showed emotion around him, then he put it in my face, made me feel worse about myself because of the fact that I was feeling bad about something, you know? Take my kindness for weakness and see what happens after that. That's a song I wrote, dude. Check out In the Image Clothing Company music. In your face, dog. That's how we feel sometimes, right? Like we're trying to get back at somebody. But here's the thing. Can we get used to the fact that I gotta stop using that word fact. I don't gotta stop using that word fact. It's just I know I don't have to at all by any means. But I just know in 2025, a lot of people are trying to say that facts are this and that and those things. Can we get used to the case that human beings like to just think that they know what's true and they don't? That's why I say don't believe me. I can be sitting here having, we can be on episode 4 million at one point of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. And I can be sitting here saying, as I do, we speak undisputed, universal, eternal, unchanging truths that are apart from me. But you can be hearing it all in ways you want to, and maybe everything I was saying was totally incorrect. That's why I say, don't believe me. But if there's truth within what I'm saying, take that. Take that. You know what I'm saying? I mean it, though. And that's why I'm so clear to say, don't believe me. My dad made me believe I had to believe him. Wow, see that? All my life growing up with him, dude, and that was not fun. I'm very clear to mention that's why I am who I am. But like I'm saying, I had to get used to just the situation I was in, and now I'm sitting here with the perspective I got. If I wasn't trying to get used to it, okay, listen, let me just not be so like slang and like thug-like with that, right? If I was trying to not have to get used to it though, growing up, if I just was just so set on changing my situation, and I didn't get to that point where I just kind of like had to accept it, and I finally got to where I pretty well did, then I would just be like making it harder on myself, because it was me realizing I had to get used to it in that time that then helped me just be able to start to be like, all right, cool, I'm just going to understand what this is then, rather than trying to change it. There's certain things we just have to get used to. And that's rough, bro. Shout out to Fetch with Rough Ruffman. Pretty sure that was PBS Kids that made that. It's rough, dude, sometimes. This life we live. But hey, what? What are you going to do? You going to try to say, hey, life shouldn't be rough? The more you battle something you're not going to change, the more it's going to be hard for you. We got to get used to the fact that, hey, that's a fact again. I don't know why. Hey, guess what? I got to get used to the fact, if you will, that that's just a word. And if I use it, I use it. But I'm a little bit torn up on, if I'm being real about it, it makes me pretty disgusted. It's actually the truth. That people use words and change them. That's what I'm saying, right? It makes me pretty disgusted that the adversary takes something that's just what it is, and he tweaks it just a slight little bit. It's disgusting. It is. It's disgusting. The world nowadays, they got all these fact checkers at this time, and a few years back, that's how it's been, A lot of that going on within that pandemic, dude. We're all so confused about what's happening. What do I believe? What medication do I take or do I not? Or do I do some kind of thing? Do I stick this thing into my body or not? And who's telling me what? And what do I believe? And then you got people on a website that just somebody is in charge of, one of the human beings that's an equal to all the rest of us. And then you got other human beings that are working for them. And then they're typing up this thing and say, this has been fact checked. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Sounds like you're starting a percussion group. Fact check. Fact check. These people out here trying to make something what it isn't. And that's what I'm not trying to do. That's why I'm very clear to say don't believe me. Because what we got to get used to is the fact, if you will, but even that, right? That people are just going to try to make you believe things all your life. They just are. Regardless of if it is your dad. That's how it was in my case. Or if it's your mom. Some people got pretty manipulative moms out there. You got to get used to that person is your mom. Right? I had to get used to, this is my dad. No matter what, until I'm like 18 years old, right? Back when I was a kid, I was saying this. It's just going to be my dad, bro. Can't do nothing about it. I mean, not really, But we got to get used to it, dude. Otherwise, we're battling a thing that will never win, But the thing is, check this out. The battle doesn't belong to us. The battle belongs to our God, and he will fight for us. Let me tell you something. Let me confess some sins for a second or two. Truly, listen to this. For so many times in my life, so often, I was trying to fight battles that weren't mine to fight. I was trying to change situations that weren't mine to change. I was trying to do all that I could to not have to get used to something that God was saying, hey, I need you to for right now. It's his battle, not mine. He fights our battles for us if we allow him to. If we say, okay, Father, my dear Heavenly Father, I'm sorry. That is a real prayer. Not that I'm praying right now like that, but I just mean like that's a prayer we can have, saying, hey, I got a lot in my life right now I don't like. And what's going on? I'm a little bit frustrated, you know? You're looking around like, can't this change? Sure it could. I've read the scriptures. I know that you're the God of miracles. I know that you're a way maker. I know that I've read stories about prophets in the past, and I know that you've told me those prophets are no better than me, but we're all equal human beings. And so you did crazy things for Moses, parting the sea so he could just walk across on dry land, and the water literally just moved at his command because you were working through him. You know? And I know this, and I've read this, and I believe it. But I don't just believe it, I know it. Because I'm Evan Strong, and I'm sitting here telling other people not to believe in anything. But I know it, Father. I know it. I got a deep-rooted, convicted testimony in me that I couldn't deny if I wanted to, because I've tried. And I'm reading about Moses and how the seas just moved, they parted for him, and just walked through on dry land. But I'm sitting here under the control of my earthly dad. Can't you change this, Father? Can't you do something for me? Huh? You really telling me I'm equal to those prophets as long as I'm willing to be used as a vessel? Then why am I sitting in this situation, you know? This is kind of partially real, but I'm also partially trying to make it just a little bit like, you know, hard-hitting. But no, it's real. I mean, I'm tearing up. I'm crying a little bit, and I mean it. It's tough, man. No, it's tough. And I'm like, Father, what's up? You know? Praying to our living God. I've heard about it. I've heard the things you've done for these prophets. I've heard that Daniel sat in a den with lions, and he came out. Unharmed. I've heard that there was another in the fire, right? Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, however you say these people's names back then. I wasn't back there, dog. I've heard these people were in the fire, and hey, guess what? You were standing right next to them, and none of them were burned. I've heard that some crazy things have happened. Doesn't matter what I heard, but I feel it, and I know this to be true, Father. But I'm sitting here in this little house as a little kid, and my earthly dad is controlling as can be. I thought you were a way maker, Father. I thought you were the God of miracles. So why am I going through all this? Why is this so hard? Why? Every time I pray and say, hey, can I please just go live with my mom? Hasn't happened yet. As a little kid, I was saying, right? What's wrong? What am I doing wrong? Am I not doing enough? I'm already going through so much, right? So I stayed. That's what I was thinking. That's what I was feeling. That's how it was. Well, the truth is, man, no, you're not doing enough. None of us are doing enough. A perfect God, looking at his imperfect children, all of us equal sinful little human beings, we're never going to do enough. But he's given us his son, man, Jesus the Christ. He came and died for us, man. The atonement of Jesus Christ, the advocate with the Father, the space in between, if you will. The one who gives us grace because we'll never measure up. But that's okay. Because all we're asked to do is what we can. And really, in a lot of times, we're just asked to get used to it. Life's hard, he says. That's why you're here. I wouldn't be sitting here right now on the 19th of February, 2025, at 25 years old, with all the understandings and perspectives and things that I have. Truly, though, I mean, I really am a book of knowledge. I really am, dude. I really am. All ego aside, I mean, I wouldn't be able to sit here and do this kind of stuff if I hadn't gone through all that. It's just some stuff I had to get used to for a time. But it's beautiful to see that a time is this life as a whole. Because our God is above space. He's above time. He's outside of space. He's outside of time. But he created this little world, this little earthly existence, this little earth, and all these little human beings for us to come here and just experience what it means to be inside of something we got to get used to. Because no matter how late you are for your appointment, and it just seems to keep happening, you just got to get used to time working how it does. And you got to kind of just deal with it the best way you can, work around it the best way you can. As a kid, I was in the situation I was in. No matter if I wanted to change or what, I just had to get used to it. What else am I going to do? Right? Complain? I sure did a lot. And I sure do a lot. And I sure will a lot, because I'm a human being. And I don't understand everything. Even though I want to. Right? I don't understand everything. There's a lot of stuff I understand pretty well. But there's a lot of things, you know? So, anyway, a lot of things we just got to get used to. And that's hard, man. It's so hard, but it really is, right? But I love it. Like, I want to sound like I'm overly exaggerating my complaint, but then I also show that I really am complaining in a lot of ways, and I definitely have. And again, I will in the ways that I do. I mean, these are real tears. That was real emotion mixed in with me also making this like a whole, thing at the same time, right? Like, yeah, I mean it, dude. I mean, it's tough. Life's hard. Yeah, I'm not just putting on a show, and I don't need to, like, you can tell. Nah, dude, it's rough, man. We just gotta get used to it. That's what this life's for, brother. It's hard. It's really hard. Right? I like it on both ends. You can see the real emotion that comes through me, but then also I just want to make it a little bit overly silly in the ways that I do at the same time, because that's kind of how life is. We gotta laugh at it, When the world turns your back on you, when the world turns your back on you? I don't know how that goes. And that's from a movie, and I want to give it credit if I know for sure what it is. I think it's the movie Sing that Disney put out. If that's Disney, I really want to give them credit, whoever this is, because I love that. But and I think there's just, that's been said in many ways and in many places through movies, that I think at least, but whatever. That phrase, whoever's said it the most, like, whoever gets the most credit from it, which probably doesn't matter. I mean, it's just words that human beings have said. Anyway, I want to give whoever said it credit, because I think Rocky might have said it. Rocky Balboa in the Rocky movies. I think whoever said it, but it's the theme. That's what I'm saying. It's all these themes where people overcame things. Guess who was the first and perfect example of overcoming the world? Jesus the Christ, right? When the world turns its back on you, you turn your back on the world. Yeah, as in, don't believe me, but that's what we've actually been commanded to do, is overcome the world. Look at the truth. Not all these opinions coming up, popping left and right, and then all of a sudden they're gone, right? When the world turns its back on you, turn your back on the world. I don't know. I want to make it silly but real at the same time, right? Just get used to it. Get used to people turning their back on you. Get used to people making promises that they don't keep, right? Every one of us is untrustworthy. The most trusting human being. The human being who is the most trusted, because they actually hold up to their end of things more than any other human being ever. They're still untrustworthy. And I've talked about this in past episodes of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, because I can try all that I can to make the rest of my whole existence as a human being be nothing else but have the intention to hold up to my end of the deal, saying that I'll be there tomorrow when I told you I would, but then I die in my sleep tonight, right? Get used to it. Not dying in your sleep, because that's only going to happen once in this life. If it does, I'm just saying, get used to people not being able to hold up their end of the deal, because we're conditional. And no matter how much that person wanted to, hey, maybe something came up, their son got tuberculosis. They're in the hospital with them, like, who knows, right? Who knows? So get used to it. Get used to being let down. I mean it. I really mean it, because that's where you're going to be freed from putting too much trust in something that can't be trusted, a human being. Get used to that, because it's the truth. Don't let me tell you something. Don't believe me. But we can't be trusted. You can't trust me, Evan Strong. Whoever you are listening to this, you cannot trust me fully. I can't trust myself fully, right? I'm sitting here saying I'm going to never do that sin that I just did. Oh my gosh, I feel disgusting. I feel miserable. I feel like I want to punch my own face through the wall, right? Because I did a sin that I knew I shouldn't have done when I went into it, and I still did it. Doing it, I still was doing it, even though I was in the middle of it saying, I don't want to do this, and I could have stopped, right? And before any of that, I told myself I never would. So I can't trust myself fully. But you know, I'm a pretty trustworthy person. Don't believe me, but I am. But just to a degree only, right? Get used to it. Get used to people letting you down, because they're always going to. No matter how much they love you, no matter how much they want the best for you, no matter how much they're your best friend or your wife, for all those men out there, or your husband, for all those women out there, they're going to let you down. They're going to lie to you, even if they never wanted to. Because, shoot, if I tell her what I did, she's going to kill me. But I never want to break trust with her. Gosh, what do I do? You know, you walk up to the situation. Honey, I got to tell you this, and I love you, right? When really, like, you broke her favorite vase, but, like, the time comes, and it's like, gosh darn it, I can't, you know? Get used to it. People lie, no matter how honest they are. Get used to it, bro. It's the human condition. Trying to be better than we are. Trying to be perfect. Yeah, you get used to it. You're never going to be. Oh, gosh, that's liberating. That's one big thing, dude. Growing up, my dad told me I had to be perfect. Once I got used to the truth, rather than what I wanted, because I thought it was going to please another equal to me human being who tried to make me believe that he was better than me, that's where the liberation came. I got used to the fact that I'm making mistakes. I'm making mistakes left and right. And I don't want to, but once I got used to the, you know, routine, saying I'm going to never make that sin again. I'm going to never do that thing. That was disgusting. But then I did it again. Shoot. Once I got used to, hey, this might just keep happening. And I'm going to have every intention within me to not have it happen. But I'm also going to have every intention in me to never die. And then next thing you know, you're waking up at the feet of our God after having died. Because that was the plan, is to die. Get used to it. There's a plan. It's apart from you, right? So, anyway, there's a lot of things we've got to get used to. Because we're not going to change it. So you can try all you want, but you're fighting something you will never win. But the battle doesn't belong to us. So what we can do, bro, I love to just sound like this, dude. I love it. A valley girl. I don't even know for sure what that's about, dog. I think just like people in California, they tend to sound a certain way. You know, people in Utah tend to sound a certain way. People over in Yugoslavia, I've said that a few times. I don't even know where that place is at, right? People are down there in the Antarctic. They sound a certain way. I don't know. I like to sound a little bit like, regardless, I'm not trying to like say a certain type of person sounds like that only, but people who are just like a little bit whiny is what I mean. And I don't mean just people from wherever I was thinking that was, but it's just, I remember people used to talk like that all the time in junior high. It's such a funny thing, because it's like you can mock something, but it's really yourself. I'm mocking myself within this. I'm mocking the fact that I'm a human being, and that's all I'm ever going to be in this life. Okay? That's what I mean. We got to get used to it. Get used to it, bro. Something's hard to hear, but something that's going to do nothing but benefit us if we can internalize it. So there's certain things we just got to get used to. So get used to it, brother. I mean it, dude. Yeah, bro. There's a lot of things we've got to get used to, dude. Nah, but in all seriousness, without worrying about trying to offend somebody, a lot of those like people from California. Let me just single out a certain part of the country on a certain part of our globe, but truly, and they talk like that, because a lot of people, that's the thing, is they get used to, gosh, man, yeah, being in this environment where they can just like be all stuck up and people like catering to them, right? Because they dress a certain way and they get people to like that. And so they can manipulate them because of those reasons. Yeah. So without beating around the bush, right? I'm going to take a sawzall to it, chop that bush in half. You starting to sound a certain way to get other people to do something? Well, let's talk about it for the people who are trying to, not have people get them to do something. Get used to it. People are going to try to manipulate you in all sorts of ways and talk to you and about you in all sorts of ways, right? People are going to try to be prettier than they are, right? People are going to try to be more masculine than they are, to try to manipulate you into doing things for them, right? So they can have an image, because now, whatever comes from whatever. Get used to the manipulation, because it's going to happen. We're human beings. If we want something and we feel like we don't know how to quite get it, we'll do all we can. I've done that. I've manipulated people. Oh, what? You thought I was such a saint? Because I'm sitting here and I got some pretty good information and I'm discussing deep topics and, I'm saying like, I know what I'm talking about. You think I never make a mistake? Hey, get used to it, bro. I'm making mistakes left and right. A lot of them I don't want the world to find out about. A lot of them I'm publicly sharing voluntarily. I'm a human being. What, is that shocking to you? That maybe I'm not who you thought I was? Hey, get used to it. People are going to disappoint you. Get used to it, right? Get used to it, dude. You're in a relationship with someone for 4 years and you thought you knew exactly who they were, but they've been hiding the whole time and they're somebody entirely different. That's not something that we should really have to get used to. But what I will say is get used to people not being fully transparent. Because no matter how much my parent growing up wanted me to be something, and no matter how much I wanted to do nothing but be entirely honest so that I wasn't feeding into the manipulation that he was doing to me, I started manipulating in my own ways, because how else am I going to feel safe? Get used to it. You're a human being. You're always doing things you don't want to be doing. And everybody around you is going to always be doing things that they don't want to be doing to you, but also things that you don't want them to be doing to you. We're imperfect. Get used to it. You're never going to have any kind of amount of anything that you do, practice or try or assign yourself to in this existence as a human being that's going to improve what you are. You're a conditional, sinful by nature, imperfect piece of flesh. And before you get all offended thinking I'm talking about someone else, what I'm doing right now is staring at myself, because I'm filming this episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, episode 64, titled Get Used to It, on a modern cell phone with the front camera, and I'm staring at myself in the screen. Get used to it. We're never going to be better than we are. Is this hard-hitting enough for you? Right? Are your feathers ruffled or what? You offended yet? Stick around. Because what happens is the deeper context we get on things that just are what they are, even if it's hard to hear, the more accepting we can be of everything, really. We just need to know the truth. And it's harsh. There's a scripture within the truth of all things, the gospel of Jesus Christ, right? We talk about the Holy Bible. We talk about the Book of Mormon. You triggered yet? There's a scripture And it's just said many times. Many times, many ways. Merry Christmas. You know what Christmas really is? It's when we celebrate the birth of our Savior, Jesus Christ. And within these scriptures, that's what I'm saying, it says the wicked, that's a hard word to hear, take the truth to be harsh. But it also says that mankind, at certain times in history, have been nothing but continually evil at all times in all ways, right? Noah's time, our God flooded the entirety of our earth, the thing that he gave to us. He covered in water. Why would he do that? What in the world? He gave us this beautiful place and he wipes it all out with water? I get used to it. Get used to being shocked by things, bro. Adam fell that men might be, and men are that they might have joy, right? Adam sinned. Whew, he was in a perfect garden. He did something wrong? Why would he do that? He literally got placed somewhere that we're all trying to be, in a perfect world, and he did something wrong? Man, if I was, we're all sitting there, if I got placed into a perfect world, I would never mess it up. Are you kidding me? Oh, yeah? That's not the case. Don't let me tell you something. Don't believe me, Evan Strong, but that's not the case. Because that happened. But the reason I know it's not the case is because we're all the same. As much as you're looking over at that guy and be like, man, I am so much better than him. You're looking over at this girl and be like, I'm so much prettier. Whatever you want to be saying. We're all the same. Don't believe me. It's just the truth. I didn't decide it. Right? I didn't design it. I can't decide it. Episode 62 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. But in all seriousness, the first human being, Adam, regardless of what you're trying to think about, what kind of beliefs you got, that's how it worked. You offended yet? Stick around. We'll give you more context. You'll understand the truth of all things. That's the goal, is to understand the truth of all things. And that's what I'm trying to do, right? Sometimes it's really hard to. You could hear how real that was, too, the way that I said it. Yeah. But the first man, the first human being, man just means mankind. You offended yet? You think there's more genders than two? Yeah, there's not. You offended yet? Stick around. Get used to it. We didn't decide it. I'm going to sit on that for a second. Point being, though, Adam sinned, the first human being to live. And so that's how I know. That's how I know that everybody else is going to mess up too, bro. But the point is, the wicked take the truth to be harsh. But I don't want to be calling other people wicked. But guess what? I don't want to be wicked. But who cares? I got to get used to the truth of it, that I'm wicked. Right? Unless you're perfect, you're wicked. And no matter how much I was trying to be perfect growing up, I had to get used to the fact that I'm messing up. And I'm sinful by nature. So that's why it seems a little bit backwards. Seems a little bit, that's a good word to use, paradoxical. To be preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ through a podcast. In the Image Clothing Company podcast is this one that I'm doing it through. And trying to share with people how to be a good person and follow a perfect one, the only perfect one that there is. And the thing that I say probably the most is that we're sinful by nature. It's like, what are you talking about, kid? People saying to me, little old Evan Strong. Shouldn't you be sitting there saying, hey, let's do better? Well, the way we're going to do better is to realize that we can't on our own. Get used to it. Trying to do everything on yourself. Yeah, surrender. Can we try to surrender, please? Because I'm trying. And boy, is it tough. But get used to it. So, we're never going to do anything on our own. Are you sure? Are you sure? Because I'm pretty good. Actually, I work better alone. That was me, like, in character. But in all seriousness, Evan Strong, me, really, truly, I, in most all cases, do work better alone. I do. I like to be alone. How many times you heard me? If you have heard, and you don't got to. I mean, if you haven't, then you haven't. But you can. You got a potential to. Go back and listen to past episodes of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. I'm always talking, bro. When I do, just meaning a lot of times I talk about, I love to be alone. And I say, like, leave me alone. And I mean it. And I say it like that, too, a lot of times when I do say it. Because I do. I mean it. Leave me alone, please. I love to be alone. And there's a lot that I can do on my own. And I can work better alone, taken with a grain of salt. But guess what? We're commanded to be like salt. Salt the earth. Go back to that sermon up the mount, right? Anyway, we can't actually do everything on our own, and we can't actually really do anything on our own. I mean, we weren't born without other people doing stuff to allow that to happen. You know what I'm saying? We wouldn't even be here to be a thought to happen if we didn't have help. Our God, He wants us to rely on Him and not do things on our own. So get used to it when things don't work out, because you were trying to do it a solo mission. You know what I mean? You going into something, bro, just turning your back on all the people who are trying to help you with something because, no, I got it. And then you fall to your knees and you sit there and you break your project in half that you were working on so hard, but you didn't want help and you thought you could do it all by yourself when the people around you offered to help you. But you got to a point where you couldn't go any farther by yourself. So now this project you were working on and you loved so much, you got so frustrated and worked up with it, you crushed it and broke it on the floor. Now you're on your knees crying over it and your tears are falling down onto it. And now you're questioning everything because you thought you could do it on your own. Well, guess what? Get used to it. You can't. And again, let me give some context if you're not watching this in visual. If you're listening in audio only to this episode of In the Image Clothing Company Podcast, episode 64, titled Get Used to It, I'm staring at myself right now, literally. Well, I guess. I'm staring at a piece of glass that we call a cell phone. And behind the glass, there's like some little tiny dots of color, red, green, and blue, but they're all like shaping to form what looks like me. Wow, I don't even know, dude. What is this? I feel like a caveman when I'm thinking about that kind of stuff, but it's just the truth of all things. It's the gospel of Jesus Christ. I got plenty of times and places, and I always say, hey, times and places for everything, right? And right now I'm here, and now. But pretty much the same exact location where I'm always at, because we live in one eternal round. And in that eternal round, sometimes I'm trying to be a square-headed kid who wants to do everything on my own, and I got to get used to it, because it never works out. But when I pray about something, my grandpa, my mom's dad, he's told me this. He said that the woman who raised him, which wasn't actually his mom, as far as I'm aware, this is the woman who was telling him these things. The woman who raised him, actually, I don't know for sure. I don't want to say it wrong. Not for the sake of being wrong, but for the sake of telling his story incorrect. I don't want to say it how it wasn't. But the woman who raised him, which wasn't actually his biological mom, she would tell him a lot growing up. Every and any and all problems can be solved as long as two people are involved. And as long as one of those persons, right, is Jesus Christ. So if you got a problem, as long as you involve Christ in it, that problem can be solved. But hey, what are we gonna want? What are we gonna hope for? What are we gonna desire and believe? That we should have it our way? This is just me talking now. That's all I'm gonna say about my grandpa's experience. But it's just beautiful because that's the truth. We have to pray through everything because we can't do it alone, right? But it's not just like, hey, because I can't do it alone, Father, we're praying. Can you help me do it the way I want it done? No, get used to it, bro. It's not going to work out how you want. It's going to work out how our living, ever-present, perfect God needs it to happen for His glory. So we got to get over ourselves, bro, and get used to it. Again, I'm talking to myself as well, or at least I'm talking to this. What is this thing? They call it an LCD screen? I don't even know what that means. Get used to it. There's a lot that I don't know. There's a lot that you don't know and you never will. Trying to learn everything in this life? Hey, bro. Hey, bear. That's us talking about talking to bears in episode 63 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. The last one titled Bears and Sharks. I think it's actually titled Sharks and Bears. But I talked about how you speak to a bear, right? That's what I sounded like I was saying there. But anyway, the whole thing is, I'm going to start to wrap this up a little bit. We got to get used to it. Get used to the fact that we're conditional. We rely on things as much as you think that you don't need nothing. Oh, yeah? Go without the things that you need to survive, and you don't anymore. As much as you think that you're always right, a lot of people don't let you manipulate them, brother. Sit on that for a second, okay? You're messing up. You're not going to get everybody to try to believe you, okay? As much as you think you can do everything on your own, I'm only one human being, and this log is really, really big. And I'm trying to lift it above my head. Gosh, I really wish I had 2 other people here to help me, but I want to do it on my own so that I'm right about, that you can't. Can't do everything on your own, brother. Sorry. Talking to myself as well. But every human to live. It's just the case. That's a big one. We can't do everything on our own. So, get used to it. Get used to it, bro. It's a big thing for me, dude. I have a hard time asking for help, though, right? Because growing up, I'd ask for help from my dad, and then he'd do it for me the way he wanted. And then it was like, well, this isn't even ever... like, it ends up being something that wasn't anywhere near what I was even intending on doing in the first place. It's like, well, then why did I ask him for help? Right? And reasons like that and things similar to that caused me to stop asking for help, trying to do everything on my own, right? But also I asked for help. He's like, why would you do that? No, you don't even get to do that now, right? Or all the outcomes that did happen, and very commonly. But, yeah. All right, I'm going to wrap it up. Wrap it up. Anyway, In the Image Clothing Company Podcast, episode 64. Get used to it. My name is Evan Strong, the founder of In the Image Clothing Company. Last 2 words in our name, bro. In the Image Clothing Company, yo. We've got clothing available when we do. We don't have it yet, but when we have clothing available, if you'd like to purchase it, go ahead. Please, only though, if you ever do, just make sure you do everything you can to get it in your size. We talk about, right, just because it's the truth, don't believe me, brother, but oversized clothing is going to alter your body. It's going to damage your physical being, and you only get one of them in this life. So, try to get it in your size if you ever do. It'll be made out of 100% natural materials and all the things that I said, right? I'm not going to reiterate right now, but I will actually. Because guess what? I'm not always right. Get used to it. And I thought I wasn't going to say it again, but I'm going to. A big reason is just for the sake of making an example out of myself. And the fact that I'm sinful, right? By nature. Staying centered, fitting correct, allowing the body to work. As I say, that's going to be every intention that we have behind our clothing. That's what it is, right? So, yeah. So like I said, 19th of February, 2025 is today's date. And, stick around. Especially if you got a problem with us, brother. Sometimes you... if I start talking about anything else, I might go like another half hour, right? When I'm trying to make like a 3-second like thing or whatever, right? Just a few seconds long is what I mean. I'm trying to like just say one more thing, and then all of a sudden I keep talking for many minutes. But just yes, please, especially if you have a problem with us, especially if you have a problem with how bold I am, and how can he be telling me things about myself when he doesn't even know who I am? Well, stick around. We'll give you some more context. We'll help you out a little bit. It's not because of me, really, truly. But again, if you don't understand that or how that can be, because I'm the one speaking, then stick around, right? The gospel of Jesus Christ is the truth of all things. Don't believe me, but yeah, I'm gonna express my gratitude, right? Publicly, just so you guys know, I'm doing this because I'm grateful too. I'm doing this because I've been given this company, because I've been given the gift of tongues, if you will, but in the sense of saying it this way, whatever that could mean. What I mean right there is just I'm very good at speaking. I really am. And it's a gift I've been given. Not to say that I'm better than anybody, but in the way of speaking, there's a lot of people that couldn't quite speak the way that I do and can't and never will be able to in this life. It's a gift I've been given, and it's something that I'm able to use to do this. And so there's a lot of gratitude that I have to just be able to sit here and do this. And also just, all the information that I've been given. Like I said, all the understandings that I have been able to have and acquire because of all these experiences I didn't want to go through. So as weird as it is to say, and as backwards and paradoxical as it just is, because the gospel of Jesus Christ is the paradoxical gospel of Jesus Christ, right? The alliterations that I love. I love alliterations. And I love the gospel. And I love Jesus Christ. I didn't want to go through any of that stuff that I had to go through, meaning anything that has given me perspective and understanding, but I wouldn't have been able to gain the perspective and understanding, at least through those avenues, without going through that stuff. And so I'm grateful for it. All the problems I had with my dad growing up and, hardships that came from that, I'm actually grateful for it because I'm a very understanding person. I've got a lot of perspective. I've got a lot of knowledge. I've got a lot of stuff I can share with the world, ways I can help people, whether I'm just sitting with them on a park bench and I just met them, or whether I'm making episode 64 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled Get Used to It, and potentially millions, billions, or every single human, really, why not, could hear these words, because I sat here and stared into a little piece of metal and plastic and glass and whatever it is that we call a cell phone, right? So I'm very grateful. I'm grateful, man. So thank you. I'm going to cut it just like that. I don't want to be pushy at all, but the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, it's the place to be. All right? You want a 180 in your life because you feel like you don't know where to turn? Well, I'll give you one good about face, and there you go. That's where you should be. Am I telling you something right now? Am I trying to tell you what to do right now? Not really, but I am telling you what will help you, and I'm telling you that out of personal experience. So, and I've had a pretty unique experience with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints myself, voluntarily removing my records at 24 years old, and now, coming back, right? Pleading to come back, wondering how I'm allowed to come back after all my terrible behavior, right? Seriously? So it's the place to be. Don't believe me, but I would never be allowed to be what I am right now if it weren't for my living God, Jesus Christ. So I say it's the truth of all things, and I say that for a reason. I'm very intentional about mentioning that and wording it that way, rather than just saying, if you need some help, It's like, no, if you want to know the truth of all things, look to the creator of them. And he has a name, Jesus the Christ, the Redeemer, the Savior of the world, the Messiah, the Shepherd, the Good Shepherd, though, right? I mean, it's very clear to be worded like that, because he's a good, good Father. And I don't have one of those in the earthly sense of what that means. Right? You call a spade, and I'm a sinful kid. Yeah. We all are. There is no perfect parent in an earthly sense of what that means, but our God is perfect. And we're all his kids, even those of us who have kids ourselves. So, I'm going to say this. You got a problem with how bold I am on things? Get used to it, because I'm here to stay.